confusing, isn't it? To wake in a world you do not know. There is you, and there is us. I'm not gonna let anything happen to this family. Me either.
Extinct is the name of the movie. The person opens his eyes in the center of a lake with a purple drone flying overhead. Visions of his circle of relative spaceships and shootouts flash before he eventually accumulating himself. The person swims closer to the shore, observed through the drone. He calls Ezra to check on his mental fitness. All at once cries for help from the lake and some other guy, observed by a woman. It appears none of them keep in mind what passed off to them. Fina acknowledges the wreckage on the shore as the remnants of a warship known as Kik, and Ezra recollects an invasion. Then the guys discover the remnants of Kar that must have been there for centuries. Seemingly there used to be an avenue in this area. Human beings consider the invasion, and it seems all of them died in unique years. Moreover, Abram confesses that he is 67 years antique. Although he seems 25 consistent with the purple drone, they had been added back to lifestyles of their high years. Their recollections are unique due to the fact they died at unique times. Round them is Earth. However, 400 years after the extinction of humanity destroyed by using extraterrestrial beings, they had been resurrected via creatures residing in the water referred to as sparks. The remaining aim is the revival of humanity, and the rest of the records may be found within the settlement in which the others who've returned live. The drone ordered Ezra to accumulate the sparks, accumulating their meager belongings. The human beings set off after the drone tried to understand why the children revived them quickly once they observe partly destroyed arches, and Abram rushes to them, rejoicing in his younger robust frame. On one of the systems he sees unknown hieroglyphics and touches them. The man is thrown returned, and he admits that he saw the entirety. All of a sudden, the pink drone is shot down and a second shot wounds Abram, and the trio runs. At the back of a hill in which Ezra is putting in place an ambush captures the pursuer. The man Jax denies the lifestyles of the agreement of the sparkling substance on his neck is a pores and skin rider. That's one with the human frame. He needs the sparks. But Fina expectantly demonstrates her skill ability with a weapon. Abram insists that when he touched the unknown symbols at the arch, he felt the vastness of outer space. But this elicits mockery from Jax, who all at once frees himself and lunges at Ezra. However, Fina factors his weapon at him this time. They tie the man securely and leave. Despite his claim to recognize Ezra's brother soon, the crew takes haven in a cave. Even as others have sparkling parasites on their necks are located, along with Ezra's brother Silas. Meanwhile, the resurrected human beings in the cave talk methods to recreate an individual and wonder wherein the extraterrestrial beings received the preliminary cloth. For the duration of the night, Abram's wound turns into inflamed. He is reduced into a small pond, where the sparks are released with the aid of morning. Abram emerges wholesome. Fina discusses what passed off to Ezra as she does not recognize why they chose her. Out of hundreds of thousands of incredible human beings, soon the resurrected people see high partitions of a settlement in the distance. However, on their manner of pores and skin riders with sparkling necks capture as much as them. Ezra remains behind to delay the pursuit. He manages to achieve this for some time until he recognizes his brother Silas is among them in the intervening time. Fina and Abram settles walls, and simply whilst it seems they may be destined to be captured, the gates open of the yellow drone neutralizes the skin riders and lets the fugitives enter. It then flies after Ezra incorporates him via the air into the settlement, wherein there's nobody round. In response to all their questions, the drone invites them to comply with and display them rows of graves. Where the settlers' relaxation later, the Yellow A drone opens the doors of a deserted Navy base for the humans wherein the previous settlers lived in the woodland. Pores and Skin Riders sees a man who escaped from them. Silas discovers that the glowing creatures they call partners has inexplicably stopped functioning in Duncan's neck and guarantees to repair it. Resurrected people research that the settlers died from a brand new virus that nevertheless spreads during the vicinity. The yellow drone asks them to release the sparks into a vessel with water and learns from them that the sparks can create a vaccine if human beings convey the elements determined within the residing lake. Fina begins to bleed from her nostril, and she stays at the bottom at the same time as the men cross to the lake. She takes at the assignment of repairing the damaged pink drone. On their manner, Ezra attempts to apprehend how the gadget that added them lower back to life. The drone operates on sparks, but who controls the sparks is unknown. Men reach the lake and release the sparks into the water to collect the important ingredients within the settlement. Ezra's spouse, Lynn, abruptly appears earlier than Fina explains that she worked as a nurse for the duration of the invasion and can provide help, but then disappears simply as abruptly at the lake shore. Ezra confesses that one of the skin riders is his brother, meaning these people are additionally resurrected. He recollects the instant, while he first noticed the alien spaceship flying overhead and signaling to his brother that he become a worthless, spoiled infant. Now he's decided to apologize and try to retrieve Silas, whilst the hologram of Lynn appears again to Fina, supporting her restore the crimson drone within the period in between. The yellow drone warns of the coming near pores and skin riders. Ezra asks Abram to run at the same time as he tries to intercept his brother Silas, but he gets surrounded and subdued. Regaining attention, he unearths himself along with his brother, who admits that he prohibited forcibly reworking him right into a skin rider because he needs his brother to sign up for them voluntarily. Each pores and skin rider has an accomplice on their neck, which teaches the character the way to behave efficiently and telepathically connects them with others. Way to the competition. Silas is now the chief and mentor for the others, while in the previous world he changed into no one. Then Silas unexpectedly fell asleep, signaling Ezra to go away. Ezra meets Abram in the woodland, to whom he explains his intention to shop his brother. The men return to the lake, in which the sparks have created 3 vaccines capsules for them. After ingesting their do they convey the 1/3 one to Fina, whose condition worsens. Lynn asks the crimson drone to replace her image with someone pricey to the girl, and Duncan appears after Fina. Fina regains attention after her pals administer the vaccine the following day. Abram finds a room that is blocked, revealing a sparkling obelisk while in the wooded area. Silas argues with Duncan about the cause of the companion controlling the mind of the pores and skin riders within the community because Silas believes it amounts to slavery within the settlement. Abram learns to examine hieroglyphs and understands that the unknown host presented to dig up weapons against the pores and skin riders in the woodland in change for extra people for the settlement. Ezra goes to the woodland for the excavation, even as Silas brings Duncan to an open region where Jax conducts training fights taunting regular humans. Unexpectedly, Duncan defeats Jax. Silas stops the duel and explains that he examined his concept, revealing that people react faster to a fraction of a second than pores and skin riders currently. Duncan has a vulnerable accomplice, so he makes choices with just one mind, the human one. In evaluation to pores and skin riders, healthy partners have a sign that passes through 2 brains, the humans and their partners, inflicting a moderate postpone. The conclusion is that people will constantly outperform them in combat to gain an advantage over human beings. Silas plans to perform brain surgical treatment to lessen the signal postpone. However, running drone and a test problem are required for this, and in the intervening time, the yellow drone brings Ezra to the excavation website online, in which the skin riders right away learn about how Ezra reveals an item that the yellow drone calls a weapon in the settlement. Abram, upon touching the obelisk, she abruptly realizes that he understands the which means of the hieroglyphs on it, but he hasn't yet. Draw close. What this understanding includes within the woodland. The yellow drone warns Ezra about the upcoming pores and skin riders. They try to flee, but the skin riders surround them and take the unearthed weapon. All at once, the weapon turns on and kills one of the pores and skin riders. Taking benefit of the chaos, Ezra scatters the rest and break out, at the same time as Fina attempts to find out from the crimson drone why the unknown beings are resurrecting humanity. She requests the revival of Duncan, unaware that he has already been resurrected and has grown to be a skin rider. Ezra brings the weapon meant to get rid of skin riders from the obelisk, hoping it will help establish touch. However, he refuses to kill the innocent population until the obelisk explains who there and what's occurring. The drones managed via the obelisk to resurrect Ezra's family if he obeys, and all subjects. Ezra has no desire but to comply. Later that night time, Fina is going to the obelisk, wherein she unearths Ezra, who, like her, hopes for the go-back of loved ones who observe that the weapon unearthed within the forest has opened the obelisk. Troubles new symbols instructing Fina to go to the lake to get hold of new. However, pores and skin riders spot her on the manor. Abram, the drone, tells him about the structure of the sparkling associate on the necks of the skin riders that is tightly connected to the human brain through a crystalline shape. Of the weapon located inside the wooded area destroys these crystals, putting off the parasite. When a pores and skin rider dies, reminiscence is preserved on the crystal, which is exceeded right down to its ancestor. This is what wishes to be discovered and destroyed. Fina sees Lynn emerging from the lake and allows her get ashore whilst Jax appears at the shore with the purple drone. Neutralizes him. The ladies attempt to get away, however, are captured via Duncan, who seizes the crimson drone and fails to apprehend Fina as his loved from the beyond. The women try to flee, but Lynn is injured, her leg, and orders Fina to go to the agreement and fetch her husband. Lynn, on the alternative hand, falls into the hands of the Pores and Skin Riders, who return her to the on the lake. Jax shows how the Sparks paintings restoration her injured leg. However, abruptly a stone hits Jax's head, and an unknown, a little wild woman takes Lynn to her wooded area dwellings, provide her with footwear and food, but it turns out the girl can't communicate for the duration of this time. Fina reaches the base and informs Ezra approximately the resurrection of his wife, Lynn, despite the yellow drone's warning that when Pores and Skin Riders take someone, it's all the time. Ezra is decided to rescue her. Jax unearths the little wild female's home, but she has already taken Lynn away, conceal in the woodland on the same time. Ezra contemplates the way to disable the pressure discipline since the obelisk prevents him from doing so, leaving him not able to depart the gates. Fina admits that she saw Duncan, who's also with the Skin Riders now, and he failed to apprehend her. Fears the same will show up to Lynn. In the meantime, in the forest, Jax tracks the runaways and explains that even the Sparks make errors, resulting in unsuitable individuals. He is ready to smash the little woman, but Lynn persuades him not to do it on the same time. Silas extracts the crystal accomplice from the deceased Skin Rider's neck and instructs certainly one of the girl to take it to the ancestor. Then they carry Lynn to him. As for Abram, whilst speaking with the obelisk, abruptly surmises that he had lived in this agreement before, which is confirmed via a notebook he located with his handwriting. Later, Fina speculates that they've all lived right here earlier than the yellow drone confirms this truth and leads Abram to a graveyard, wherein he shows everybody who's buried there, inclusive of Ezra's grave. It turns out that he had additionally been resurrected and lived in the settlement at one factor. Then the yellow drone courses Abram to the following grave, in which he reveals himself and encourages him to begin a brand new life. Honorably, Fina needs that the person bind himself. He concurs, however, all at once snatches a weapon from Fina and stuns the Pores and Skin Rider standing behind her on the identical time in the bunker. Abram is trying to discover from Yellow wherein the progenitor is positioned. However, she does not recognize. However, Jax is aware of, and he heads to the bottomless lake, dives into it, and emerges in a cave. Whilst Silas is trying to convince Ezra that existence in his community is a whole lot better than in the bunker, Fina starts to accept as true with Duncan and concurs together with his plan, and inside the camp Lynn's escape is discovered by way of Duncan. Right now gets a message about this from other Pores and Skin Riders and agrees with Fina's plan to send them on a fake trail to enter the camp and store Ezra. The pursuit heads in every other route. Silas demonstrates to his brother the competencies that an associate gives to the human frame. He dips his hand into a vessel with sparks and explains that they can't kill the associate because it is going against their ideas, so if Ezra desires to kill the associate, he may have to kill the individual. Fina and Duncan infiltrate the camp and capture the Pores and Skin Riders' weapons, and Jax reaches the ancestors' residing region. He asks them to explain how the drone works, and numerous human figures pop out to him. Fina and Duncan locate Lynn. The lady explains that once being inflamed by using the parasite, she right now plunged her hand into the sparks, and it seems to have helped. Duncan asks the ladies to depart at the same time as he reveals Ezra. The ancestors show Jax how the drone works, and in the bunker Yellow confesses to Abram that not a human lies in one of the graves. Silas proves to Ezra that the obelisk is no higher than a companion, as it additionally subjugates human beings. He lets slip that every one of them, together with his brother's spouse and daughter, as soon as lived within the settlement. Their conversation is interrupted with the aid of Duncan. Beneath danger of fingers, takes Ezra leads the group to the agreement through a shortcut, but the defensive barrier for detecting accomplice Duncan does now not let him skip. Not like Lynn then ties his palms, but at that moment, the pursuit led by using Silas bursts onto the clearing. Duncan pushes Fina is in the back of the barrier, and Ezra prepares to fight, and Abram runs to the obelisk, and it shall we the men throw on the circumstance that Duncan stays within the backyard until they parent out the way to loose him from the parasite at the identical time. The ancestors expressed issue about Jax's hatred for humans, as they are a whole lot better vendors than Kicks, and that they suggest him to discover a compromise. In the meantime, Duncan confesses that his associate continues to be weak. However, he is gaining strength. He recalls the settlers and confirms that Kylie is alive. Sparks rejuvenate people in the high of existence. but children on the age of their actual deaths. He additionally lost a spouse and a child, and it became Fina. Even though the lady does now not recall this, Abram explains that they're another generation of the revived first one lies within the graves, and they're them too. Jax reprograms the red drone, refusing everything human that could be in its reminiscence. Fina unties her husband, but whilst she falls asleep, Duncan's associate receives a sign from Silas, and he heads to the bunker there. Abram confesses to Ezra that the drone confirmed him the memory of another woman he noticed 12 months earlier than the invasion. It appears like someone knew approximately the invasion and provided humans help. He desires to seek advice from with Yellow. However, she is nowhere to be discovered. That this takes place due to the fact Duncan is simply locking the drone at the back of one of the panels. Then he assaults Abram, knocks him out, and heads to the obelisk. Notwithstanding his human aspect resisting it, he screams in frustration, and Ezra hears him. He runs to him. However, Duncan closes the doorways and enters symbols that deactivate the force. Subject realizing this, Ezra rushes to Fina, and they manage to barricade the bunker. Duncan's partner comes out in the open and confesses that everyone this changed into executed for the sake of the weapon he concealed. He is ready to reveal where Kylie is now. If they surrender the bunker to the Skin Riders, the man is tied up outdoor. The sounds of banging are heard on the Skin Riders trying to interrupt down the door via Duncan. Silas offers it hand over the bunker. Then he's going to say where Ezra's daughter is now because someone from the first agreement controlled to avoid death from disorder. A debate ensues, ensuing in a selection to deactivate the parasite. The usage of Lynn's scientific expertise. Jax returns. He expresses his dissatisfaction to Silas, as he could have inflamed Ezra long in the past. However, we could him cross. Silas cuts off the communication on the way to hold running on the drone at the moment. In the bunker, Lynn tries to parent out how the partner works, and it confesses that it can purpose incredible ache to its grasp. Ezra and Abram conclude that the agreement existed for as a minimum 10 years, and there have to be survivors, and any other case, who's buried the fallen. Moreover, said that a drone is buried in one of the graves at that moment. The knocking on the door resumes. Ezra recalls that there's energy inside the bunker. Fina digests the cable, and a robust electric shock destroys is one of the Skin Riders. At the same time, Abram reveals Yellow concurrently. Human beings recognize that Duncan is appearing as a transmitter, and they pass him to every other room as they element. Ezra asks to tell his brother that he loves and believes in him. Message puzzles Silas. Yellow scans Duncan, discovers that the parasite has affected all human organs, or even the sparks cannot keep him. Abram tries to get solutions from the obelisk, and Yellow stated that Duncan turned into giving get right of entry to code, but via whom the person once more remembers that female within the health facility. She had a drone sparks and symbols of knowledge on her bracelet, so something turned into known. Earlier than the invasion, at Ezra's request, Yellow suggests the picture of the lady, and he recognizes his mother, Eleanor. In the meantime, Silas prepares to retain breaking down the doorways, but something leads him to the cemetery. Jax, following him, reminds him that he is not human and he need to now not care about the graves. So he intends to begin silencing personalities from him. Silas is arrested. At this time, within the bunker, Yellow confesses that Eleanor became one of the initiators of the revival of the human race. Duncan isn't always mendacity Kylie turned into in the settlement, and only he can say in which the survivors are now Duncan's companions. Is knocked out with a tranquilizer, and the man is tied to a table while the parasite sleeps. The man comes to and factors on the map the course the survivors went. He advises finding the wild lady and wakes up, after which Yellow reveals the weapon he had hidden. In advance, the people observe the silence outdoor, and establishing the doors kills the sentinels left by the Pores and Skin Riders. Make sure that there is nobody else inside the backyard. Ezra and Lynn say goodbye to their pals and got down to discover Kylie. Jax turns on the drone, intending to dispose of the human persona from Silas, and learns approximately the presence of Ezra and Lynn is in the woodland, and he sends the Pores and Skin Riders are to follow the pair. Fina comes to Duncan, admits that she is prepared to kill him to free her cherished one. However, Yellow knocks him out, regains attention inside the cemetery, and is relieved to suppose that Fina could not bring herself to damage him. In reality, Yellow has injected a beacon into his frame, and now human beings can tune his path. At this time, Ezra and Lynn locate the wild female and ask her to guide them to Kylie. Silas regains consciousness while the Crimson Drone informs him that he did the contrary, preserved his character, and suppressed the parasite's competencies. On the equal time, Ezra and Lynn be aware they are being followed and trying to prevent the Skin Riders, but arrows fly from the rocks, the Pores and Skin Riders perish, and the survivors approach the humans while inside the camp. Jax leaves Duncan on defend. Even as he and his humans comply with Ezra and Lynn, they're then scanned for protection, and upon confirmation, the settlement leader Rowan leads them into the camp. She warns them that they do no longer without a doubt know their daughter. They simplest don't forget her as much as the age of 6, and they're merely copies of individuals who lived within the agreement. Abram and Fina dig up a broken drone from the grave, hoping to retrieve statistics from its memory. Rowan brings Ezra and Lynn to the hidden camp. Inside the mountain caves, noticing the odd expressions on human beings' faces, she explains that they both died defending the previous camp from an attack. If it were not for Lynn, no one would have survived. If Silas had killed the girl, Fina connects yellow to the memory of the broken drone, and she or he promises to display the activities of the Beyond on the camp. Ezra and Lynn's adult daughter arrives. Although she knows what they experience, she refuses to recognize them as hers. Parents notice that Silas is experiencing extreme pain. He flies to Duncan, and at that second in the camp, a bloody Justin appears, who orders him to take the rest of the humans and rush to the location in which they have been ambushed. Includes out the order, and Jax disappears. As it was a hologram created using purple, Silas escapes, and the actual Jax reveals that the ambush website orders a seek of the rocks within the bunker. Yellow transports Fawn and Abram enter a digital truth of the past agreement in which people went about their day-by-day activities. Jax enters the gates and explains that Silas developed an increase on his neck, after which he attacked his pals. All this passed off close to the old KQ deliver returning. In their fact, the humans realized that this changed into the first case of accomplice contamination. Yellow explains that the parasites create a shape just like to fungal spores. Silas likely inhaled them. The parasites themselves have been brought using the KS, who were their companies before people. Even as a boy from the survivors, Thomas carelessly falls into the hands of Justin. Silas begins to enjoy excessive pain, attempts to alleviate his condition, and notices Duncan dashing closer to the bunker. Reputedly, has observed his breakout and wants to detain Silas. Red leads him any other manner on the identical time. Thomas learns that he has been inflamed. With the parasite on the camp, his absence is mentioned. Rowan calls a counselor, and Ezra advises them to escape if Thomas exhibits the camp. They may not survive. Yellow shows how Abram proposed to create a virus able to of killing the parasite, although the idea itself belongs to the obelisk. Humans heatedly talk this concept, and many disagree. Lynn suggests splitting up. Those who take the virus must stay inside the bunker, as they will be weak, and Rowan speaks towards it. Abram realizes that he became the cause of the remaining deaths within the caves, urges anyone to depart at the same time as he defends. Presently, Silas reaches the bunker and sees Duncan sitting by using a campfire. He lures him into the workshop and locks him in there. Abram is overwhelmed with guilt, runs to the obelisk, voices his accusations. All at once it creates the photo of a second Abram, who says that on the alternative facet of the obelisk is creators who surely believed they have been saving the agreement from the virus. Simply became out to be slower than the parasite cells. The second one, Abram, disappears because the voices of Ezra and Lynn come from in the back of the doorways. Fina opens the doors, and friends push Silas inside. They right away disappeared, as they were holograms created by using pink. Silas have been requested to be heard. The drone supports this request, and reviews that they cannot smash the ancestor without Silas. At this factor, a boy loses recognition, and they create him inside Ezra, Lynn, and the younger archer's installation in ambush, but Thomas appears, shoots at them, and wounds Kylie's fiancé. Noko. Ezra kills the boy, and upon examination, finds a parasite lifting his arrow. He realizes there's something on its tip at that second. Jax appears together with his humans and calls them to conflict. Red places Silas into a coma. In the meantime, Lynn and Kylie carry the injured Nico. Interior. Justin orders his guy to observe the backup entrance to the cave. Lynn starts off evolved treating Nico, but the worst component is that the arrow tip would possibly have parasite larvae at the boy, then needs to be killed as Lynn herself units such guidelines. Duncan attempts to call any of the Skin Riders for assist, and Yellow explains to Fina and Abram that the parasite is killing Silas so that he can't display the Manitou, the progenitor. Then Rid admits that he can hyperlink the minds of Abram and Silas, which might assist reveal the name of the game at the moment. Kylie decides to assist her father patrol. The woman recollects the past and calls Jax his best buddy, which significantly surprises Ezra, and his urge to kill arises due to the fact the parasites are very afraid that the human internal may take over if he recalls his attachments. Father and daughter back to the cave, and Ezra proposes that his spouse, daughter, and Nico take every other road. Even as he guards them after heated arguments, they head to the second exit. Abram enters Silas's mind and reveals himself in a church. It seems that the boy's thoughts considers the church a sanctuary. Abram admits that Silas will no longer come to himself, and he describes the way to the lake of the progenitor. The parasites are interconnected. Precisely through it, it's far the source of their strength, electricity, and expertise. Silas knows for certain that humanity will now not survive if the lake does not disappear. Ezra accommodations to trickery, and Kylie kills a lurking skin rider. The father bids farewell to anybody and live within the cave at the same time as Abram and Fina expand a plan to ruin the progenitor. Yellow explains that the weapon is composed of the 3 components. 2 of these are standalone weapons capable of operating independently of every different. However, the pinnacle part is risky for people themselves, so its miles discarded. Most effective for the lower part remains, which destroys the progenitor, but this element will no longer paintings. Without the Middle East, a human persona must be placed, but the progenitor has studied all of the pores and skin. Riders in this global, so the possibilities of entering into it are narrow, after which Abram realizes why Silas changed into wanted later. Fina displays on her promise to Duncan to kill him and unfastened him from the Paris. Then Yellow admits that her husband is within the workshop inside the yard. The lady palms herself and heads to the yard, but just as she is ready to open the door to in the workshop, a pores and skin rider enters the backyard and releases Duncan. Fina tries to forestall the men, but Duncan reminds her that she cannot kill him and leaves. At this time, Abram involves Silas again and explains that they want his assist. Jax decides to attack. Figuring out that Ezra is the handiest defender of the camp, he orders his guys to engage him while he follows the trail of Lynn. Kylie and Nico is losing power, and Lynn comes to a decision to make a stretcher, even though the boy requested to just depart him, and Ezra sets up an ambush and, one after the other, removes the skin riders. Then follow the path of his wife. Nico transforms and grabs Lynn via the throat. He is prepared to kill the girl, but Kylie interferes with the boys. The associate admits that the female may be very expensive to him, but he cannot indulge the provider's weaknesses, and when Nico raises his sword, Kylie shoots him. Ezra catches up with them, not understanding that Jax is tracking their reunion. However, he receives a message approximately Silas's betrayal, and Jax leaves Silas, asking Abram to look ahead to his demise. Take his crystal and insert it into the weapon, then he will be in the center component and can assist. Abram does now not recognize how it works. However, way to Silas, they say goodbye. Abram comes to his senses whilst Silas dies, and Jax catches up with Duncan and his guys by using the lake. After a dispute, he orders everybody to live within the ambush, and he and Duncan will dive into the progenitor. Meanwhile, Lynn and Ezra bury Nico and console their daughter concurrently. Fina and Abram bury Silas later. The businesses meet unaware that a black drone is watching them, which takes to the air above the earth and heads for a spacecraft. Abram tells Ezra everything that took place together with his brother and the plan to smash the progenitor, but he does no longer want to endanger his own family. Vaccinates Kylie, explaining that the A vaccine became made by using sparks. The female tells Fina that Duncan have become a skin rider after her death, and nobody is aware of how it occurred at the same time. Abram admits that he now not believes inside the obelisk, but he believes in Silas and is equipped to do everything to destroy the progenitor. He tells Ezra about the weapon operation. A part of Silas will guide them inside. However, what to do subsequent would not recognize. Ezra laughs at one of these plans, and his daughter hears this. Abram and Fina try to persuade Ezra that this is why they have been resurrected, otherwise humanity is doomed, but they cannot convince him. Then Abram and Fina depart. Together, Ezra is laid low with guilt. Although Lynn tries to remind him of his responsibility to his circle of relatives right now, Kylie is reviewing the map to the progenitor's lake and secretly leaves the bunker. Red informs the dad and mom that he cannot discover the female, and they understand wherein she has long gone. Rush after her, whilst Kylie catches up with Fina and Abram, and later Ezra and Lynn appear, so all of them come collectively again, but on the lake itself. They fall into an ambush with the aid of the skin riders. A battle ensues in which the institution of survivors wins. However, Abram is critically wounded. However, Kylie has Sparks together with her, and she indicates liberating them into the lake as they start doing this. Duncan emerges from the water and shoots. Lynn and Kylie Fina below the duvet of a defend rushes to him, and they each disappear underneath the water. Ezra releases the Sparks and brings the wounded into the water. Then a wounded Fina emerges. Saying she could not conquer Dunk, Ezra dives and unearths a wounded Duncan, who has reverted to his genuine self earlier than demise. He apologizes and loses attention, and Ezra sees in the front of him a glowing something with crystals, and suits the lower part of the weapon onto one and all them. Then he inserts Silas's little crystal into the middle part of the weapon and looks for the region where it needs to be positioned. However, then Jax, it seems he has continually hated his service and all people, and he will no longer allow the progenitor be destroyed by way of the guy's attractive combat. And simply as Jax is about to win, the revived Duncan assaults him. Ezra reveals the proper crystal and fits the middle a part of the weapon onto it, and suddenly finds himself in a room where he's met by Silas, the brother, who explains that they are within the progenitor, and simplest, he ought to create this domestic in this area. He is a worm, from which destruction will input the progenitor. Ezra selections up the field with the image of expertise from his mom, and he realizes that it's Miles, a detonator. The brother says goodbye to him, and when Jack sings "Spark Off the Bomb," Ezra finds himself in the cave where the progenitor is destroyed. To Jax's awesome sorrow, the person emerges and finds his loved ones healed. Their elation is washed away via a black drone, which again heads to the spaceship, where it is met via Eleanor and Duncan. Realize that the deed is completed and humanity has a hazard. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.